Hey folks, this week in my Practice of Public History course, we are talking about the public history of Pocahontas. Spoiler alert, Disney lied to you. But, not spoiler alert, Disney doesn't get paid to tell you the truth because Disney gets paid to entertain you. The bigger issue is who else has lied to you about Pocahontas and what can we do about it? So I'm Tad Sturmer. I teach public history at Johns Hopkins University. I'm the film and digital media editor of the Public Historian. So let's talk about this and let's talk about why it's important. Let's talk about why we're talking about it in my class. This is a case study in how people create their perceptions about the past and about how other people will distort it and misuse it in order to achieve their own ends, so that my students have an opportunity to understand the way that other people create narratives, even if those narratives are false narratives, are based upon fictions, how they create them, why they create them, and more to the point, and more importantly, how do they impact audiences' perceptions of the past? And therefore, how does it apply to their present? There's this thing in public history practice that we call the historical imaginative. And that just means, a whole bunch of big words, it means how do you come to understand your history? It's not through a whole bunch of thick books. It's not even through classrooms, although those certainly are a part of it. It's through all of these different elements, all of these different media elements, all of these different impressions, all of these different influences that impact you, that inform your view of the present, but certainly your view of the past. It can even be stories that your grandfather tells. How is your historical imaginative, how does your imagination put together all of these influences to create your perception of Pocahontas, Matoaka, Amanute, Rebecca, who takes on all of these different guises, being consistently used and distorted throughout her brief life, and certainly throughout the 400 years since her death. And so what we're exploring this week is, okay, how does the historical imaginative of Pocahontas get created? Now, we can sort of talk about what's going on in the 19th century and earlier 20th century, but nothing compares to 1995 with the release of Disney's Pocahontas. No matter who you talk about, whether you like it or not, the number one influence on most people in terms of their perceptions of Pocahontas are going to involve that damn raccoon. It's going to involve Colors of the Wind. It's going to involve somebody saying Wingapo. It's going to involve the animated Pocahontas. So you have to, not being academic historians, we have to deal with the public, we have to deal with the people, we have to deal with stories the way they are, not the way they wish they were. We have to go to where our audiences are. It helps us understand that that's where people are coming from. Okay, but Disney, yes, Disney lied to you. Disney doesn't get paid to tell you the truth. You don't buy tickets to go see a Disney movie to tell you the truth. Where are your expectations here? Disney has a responsibility in order to be reliable, one that they are recognizing more and more. However, in the case of Pocahontas, and we can talk about that in other cases. We can talk about Tiana, and we will, in another post, talk about that with Tiana. We're going to talk about her new Bayou Ride, and we're going to talk about how that is a matter of public history. There's a great article in the Smithsonian written by a public historian who works at the Smithsonian, who understands Disney and public history, and that we are putting into our journal. We are, in fact, going to review a ride for the first time in the history of the journal as being public history, the new Disney Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So Disney, having worked at Disney as a producer at Disney Citizenship, when we did those kind of things, Disney's trying to get it right and understands its responsibility for getting stories right that it had got wrong and that it played a role in getting wrong. But when we understand Pocahontas, we had to start with the film, whether we like it or not. Now, what is surprising is what I'm having my students watch after that. We're not going to do a lot of readings this week. We're doing a lot of watchings this week. I'm having them watch a number of different documentaries that are all couched in these kind of crypto history terms: the hidden history of Pocahontas, the lost history of Pocahontas, the mystery of Pocahontas, all of that kind of crap, right? Yet they are done by BBC or History Channel or Discovery or PBS, but they all have the same kind of framework. Here is the story you never knew about Pocahontas. But what's very strange is that it's almost always the exact same people telling the story. It's a whole bunch of white people. This story is owned by white people. right? It's like the Patriot myth. It is owned by white people. And so you will find the same historians, the same people who run particular sites saying almost the exact same thing about her, and very few indigenous people who get to tell their side of the story. What is very interesting is in the years since 1995, since Pocahontas came out, and the regular, every couple of years, there'll be a new documentary about another 90 minutes of the hidden history of Pocahontas, the Pocahontas you never knew, that will come along with this kind of breathless interpretation that will be in no way new. It will be almost a virtual repeat of the same documentary that was made 3 years before. And I'll give you a list of what my students are watching this week. What is very interesting is that as you get closer to the present, as you get closer to 2024, the stuff gets better. The stuff gets more authentic. The stuff gets more accurate. Why? Because digital engagement enables people to tell their own version of the story. So it gets more hard-hitting, it gets more blunt, but it gets more real. And so, yes, do you get people like Howard Lewis Gates doing crazy things with a white guy? Oh my gosh, Edward Norton is a descendant of Pocahontas. Let's go ahead and continue to put this into a white context. Gah. You have, on the other hand, probably the single best digital media projects going on in America, which are done by PBS Origins, an Indigenous Peoples History of the United States. PBS Origins is doing outstanding stuff consistently, specifically from an Indigenous perspective. And they did a video not that long ago that was about the real story of Pocahontas, Amanuka, Amanute, Mataoka, Rebecca. All of these names of hers in a brief life tells you a lot about how she was used in her life and how she's been used since. But in any case, the folks at PBS Origins have been doing an amazing job by doing what public history does, which is we have to talk about not just the past as it was and getting that authentically correct. We also have to talk about, so what? How does it matter to today? And with murdered and missing Indigenous women, this is a major issue that deserves much more attention. And we can use Pocahontas to actually shed an authentic light onto that. We're not putting square pegs in round holes together here. This is, in fact, directly related to a modern experience and helps us inform what's going on with Indigenous peoples today. And that is, in the end, still a service, a sacrifice that Mataoka can continue to make. So, yeah, Disney lied to you. Pocahontas was not a princess. She was a child. She was kidnapped. She was exploited. But everybody, most people, will still continue to romanticize her story, quite literally, romanticize her story, and therefore romanticize colonialism every single time. That myth is a harmful myth because it undermines our perceptions about Indigenous peoples and our ability to contextualize them properly and their ability to tell their own story. Mataoka was a diplomat. She was a peacemaker, and she made sacrifices. Her story was not just of resilience, not romance, resilience, persistence, survival, but also her real story is that of sacrifice. So we need to make sure that sacrifice means something, right? So if we want to sort of decolonize this history, if we want to tell an honest history, we need to understand, well, how do people gain their perceptions of that? So I want to know how you gain your perceptions of this. We talked about it a couple of months ago, but it's Pocahontas time again. Tell me what your perceptions of Pocahontas are, and more to the point, where did you get your primary influence about Pocahontas? Was it the movie? No shade in that. That's going to be the answer for most people. And what has it been since then? We can use that as a useful jumping off point. The discussion question for my folks is really about how have other historical figures become Disney-fied and whitewashed? Again, not Disney's responsibility. However, they have a role that they can play. Drop their names in the comments and let me know who else has become whitewashed and Disney-fied in this way so we can reclaim their stories too. Let me know what you think. It's a useful context. Next week, Salem witch trials.